Hi, everyone. Just as before, make sure you have already completed the reading before proceeding with this presentation. Also, make sure you think about any questions I pose throughout the presentation. I will be following up on those questions in class. So let's start our conversation about groups and organizations. As we begin our conversations, take a moment to think about what groups you belong to. The book goes into a lot of detail about different types of groups, so personalizing the conversation might help you get a grasp of the topic. So, what groups do you belong to? Are they primary or secondary groups? Also, think about what are some in groups and out groups you can think of in your life. And then finally, how have reference groups affected your life? Social network is another term you should probably be familiar with. It's not really brought up in the book, but I want to mention it here. This is the web of direct and indirect ties connecting you to other people who may also, in turn, affect you. So it's the connections in your life. Now, don't confuse the sociological term social networks with the technology term social networks that you're familiar with. Of course, those would be like Twitter and Facebook, Snapchat, whatever. Both of those are similar in practice, but they are different in how we actually use the terms. Research on social networks in terms of sociology has shown that indirect ties can be as important as direct ties. So, not just the people you're directly connected to, but even the people you're connected to through other people, those indirect connections. Think for a second about jobs and social networks. This whole concept that you've probably heard before of it's not what you know, it's who you know. So we've used this example in class before, but making a friend, that's your direct connection, is great, especially if that friend then has family members who own a business or own a company that you're interested in working for, and so they might be able to help you get a job. So there are indirect connections there that are going to help you in the long run. So take a moment and think about what are your social networks? Who makes up those social networks? Think about the direct and the indirect ones as well. And then have those social networks in any way affected your life at some point? It could be a job or it could be something else. Now, as we've seen, our social groups create the norms for us. A lack of norms is what Emil Durkheim called anomie or anomie. I think it's supposed to be anomie, but I always get this word, the pronunciation, wrong. I don't like the way that's pronounced, but anyway, anomie. This can manifest itself in not meeting ethical or societal standards. This can occur when the expectations of behavior are unclear and the system breaks down. On the left, you see Emil Durkheim. On the right is a book by Robert Putnam. It's a really well known book, especially within sociology. And as you see here, it's a national bestseller called Bowling Alone. Putnam says in this book that our current society is fragmented, thus increasing anomie among the population. He bases this idea on the fact that fewer people participate in civic engagements, which can build democratic community. For Putnam, civic engagement includes social groups like the Civitans, Kiwanis, and bowling leagues. That's why it's called Bowling Alone. So, bowling leagues are a type of civic engagement. Now, Putnam's critics point out, though, that people have actually created new ways to stay connected. So think about it. If you never joined the local Kiwanis Club or Civitans group or bowling league or whatever, what other ways could you stay in touch with your peers and the people in your community? How would you learn the norms of your society and your social groups if you're not seeing them on a regular basis at these meetings? As far as leadership, while the book provides a lot of information about leadership, which I really do think you need to consider as you move forward with your group work, I wanted to introduce one other type of leadership just briefly, and that's called the Social Change Model, or SCM. This model is centered around leadership aimed at affecting social change. We're going to talk more about SCM at the end of the semester when we look at social change, but for now, think about the bullet points on this slide. These are the underlying tenets of leadership according to SCM. As you become leaders in your group, in this class, in college, and in life, consider what you think being a quote unquote leader is or should be. How do the 6 elements you see on this page correspond to your ideas of leadership? Does this look like what you think of when you hear leadership? The book discusses this concept of meritocracies, which you can read about on your own. But it also mentions, and I'm going to quote here from the book, many well documented examples of success by those who did not proceed throughout traditional meritocracies. That's on page 126 in your book. I just want to address this part of the book. The examples the book gives are tech company founders, such as the ones you see here. Bill Gates, of course, is on the left, and that's Mark Zuckerberg on the right. Both of these men dropped out of college and started their own companies. They then, of course, became millionaires, and now I think they're both billionaires. But we need to make sure that we don't let the exception become the rule. Not only are they the exception to dropping out of college and being successful, but they also had other advantages we don't often hear. We oftentimes hear this whole concept of starting a business in the garage, but what we need to be aware of is that both of these men come from well-to-do families and had access to technology that most people did not at that time. So be very careful of this whole business started in the garage myth. And also, moving forward, keep in mind these people are the exceptions. And a lot of times we're going to talk about things throughout this class, and you're probably going to think in your mind, well, I know someone who doesn't fit that, or I know someone who's not like that, or I'm different from that. True, but are those the exceptions you're thinking about, or are those the rules? More often than not, they're probably going to be the exceptions. So don't let the exceptions become the rules in your mind. As you continue to consider bureaucracies and meritocracies, I want to challenge you to explore the different businesses and organizations around you with a critical eye. Some of the things to consider is how quickly an organization can change when it is based on bureaucracies. And again, the book talks about this. Bureaucracies can a lot of times drag a business down from making changes. Specifically, I want you to think about for-profit education versus public education. It's something you're in the midst of right now. You're in public education. But you had options. One of those options was for-profit education. Are we training you in public education for the jobs that exist? Oftentimes, for-profit educational institutions seem to respond to changing markets more quickly than public education does because they don't have as much bureaucracy holding them down. Now, does this mean that for-profit education is better for you? That's a good question, and I want you to think about that. If you're not familiar with for-profit colleges, go ahead and Google that term. You'll learn a lot more about it. You might also find information if you Google the term proprietary education. That's another word for that. Okay, finally, while we will explore the concept of McDonaldization in class, I simply want to pose the questions that the book offers in terms of how we value certain types of jobs. How do you view service jobs like fast food and gas station employee? On this slide, you can see the pay and benefits for a gas station job on the left. This is for a company called Buc-ee's, which is a Texas-based company, and just incidentally, they've opened their first store outside of Texas. It's going to be in Mobile, Alabama. So the people in Mobile could have jobs like this at what's basically a filling station, gas station, travel center, something like that. Now, does this look like a good job? Also on this slide, which might be hard to read on the right-hand side, is a list of jobs in Alabama in 2015. Notice that retail and food service account for the third and fourth highest number of workers. Service industry jobs are supposed to increase as we move forward. So how do you view these types of jobs? Have you ever had one? What did you learn from those jobs that might help you as you move forward in your career? All right, I've given you quite a bit to think about. We will discuss all this in class on Tuesday, so bring any questions and ideas you have. Also, don't forget to complete the quiz posted on Blackboard. All right, good luck.